Felix, we had one of probably the most fun I've had watching a playoffs in a long time. I think I heard something where there were more score changes, lead changes in the games in this wild card round than there has ever been in any other entire playoff, from the wild card all the way to the Super Bowl, which is, I think, is insane to even just say out loud. That's crazy.
It is a lot of fun, and I think it reminds me of a couple years ago. It was that divisional round where it was the 13 seconds game took over everybody's memory, but also Tom Brady and against the Rams with the Bucks, they came down to a final score. I believe it was the Green Bay Packers and the 49ers or something like that. And so it was just like they were like all of the divisional round games were great that week or whatever it was. I think it was like the 2021 playoffs or something like that, where the Bengals and the Rams eventually played in the Super Bowl. But you're absolutely right, where it was just like, oh, here we go. And then Monday night is like, all right, yeah, Texans beat the Steelers. Nice. But also, like, it was just like it was a fun version of that to watch, because the Texans play a fun brand of defense because they just got dudes everywhere. But I mean, it is just awesome to see that even without the Kansas City Chiefs, it is possible to have a good playoffs.
Yeah, I think the last two games of the matchup, so like the Chargers Patriots, I think we had talked about Paper Tiger Bowl. It's going to be really ugly. It's going to just not be a good football game. It's going to come down to probably who has the better defense at the end of the day. I think won it just versus an offense. The Chargers offense has just fallen off a cliff. The Chargers, I thought, played really well. We'll get into it as we go. Make sure as we get into this, if you're listening on the desktop, go to Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever it is. Make sure to hit the subscribe button there. Follow us on that. It helps us out, help the show grow. As always, we're here to talk ball. Let's get into that. Enough of that. Oregon versus Indiana. Well, let's go back to school. Let's talk about this. Everybody has been focused on the Saban connection of everybody that was in the Final Four. But yes, we have Mario Cristobal. Yes, we have Cignetti. Everybody brings it up because Saban is on it. We all know ESPN controls college football. Saban works for ESPN now, so they're going to make sure to use his name all the time. But this is actually, these two teams are super connected. So I guess Fernando Mendoza's dad played high school football with Mario Cristobal in Miami. Wow. Fernando Mendoza is obviously from Miami, playing in that stadium, playing against the hometown team as an Indiana Hoosier. But I think one of the deeper connections here, this is actually the Cignetti Bowl, and that's because Corey Heatherman, the defensive coordinator, and then Bryant Haynes, the defensive coordinator for Indiana, built this defense, both of their defenses, with their time at James Madison. And I think that's kind of the ultimate connection. Obviously, I run Match Quarters. It's about defense. So a very, very convenient way to talk about the national championship.
I mean, yeah, it is really interesting to see. And like, we've seen Indiana obviously win every game they've played this year, but also we've seen them win every brand of games, where they beat Oregon last week, where it was just a mauling 52-22. They did whatever they wanted to, or excuse me, 56, however many points. They scored a lot of points.
They scored over 50.
They scored as many points as they needed to, right, and then some. So so we've seen them do that, but we also saw them in the Big Ten championship game, win a game 13-10 against a team that also could be here right now in Ohio State. And so and then they're playing against a team like Miami, who is like, oh snap, they got dudes. They get real physical, and like a very Mario Cristobal team, exactly what Mario Cristobal wanted to build when he got to Miami. And so it is really interesting when they match up that way, where it is like, sure, I want to talk more offense as much as we can, but even when you want to switch the conversation, at least just switch it to physicality when it comes to these offensive lines, these tough guys. They can play, even if it's just like, yeah, Indiana, there might be a basketball score or whatever. They just jumped up and got up, but also they've infused this culture with, no, we can play. We're dudes too.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. This game will be defined by the trenches. I saw this. I think one of the aggregate Twitter people were out there doing a meme of like the 6'8", 365-pound dude from Miami versus the 6'2", 300-pound D tackle from Indiana. There's like a huge deal. I also think it's stylistically different, but it does really illustrate, like, Miami is one of those teams where they're kind of built on paper to be really elite. They've got NFL guys everywhere in the secondary, and especially at the D-line. The D-line is just, Bain is going to go in the top 10. He's just the same size as like a Myles Garrett, right? Like where he's going to be 6'4", 6'5", 280. He can pump inside if you need him to. I'm not saying he's Myles Garrett by any of the stretch of imagination, but he is the prototype for a 4-down defensive end. So you look at, and then you look across, and it's Indiana does a lot of simulated pressure. They have, I think, the 10th highest stunt rate in college football. They're a movement-based system, to use a basketball term for a basketball school. They're a movement-based defense where they're moving around in the back end and moving around on the front. And if you really look at it, it's so weird. The Miami fans, especially on social media, are just really positive about this matchup. And I really think it goes down to no one wants to believe that this is Indiana. This is the same thing with like Vanderbilt. Like no one wants to believe Vanderbilt won 10 games. They did. So it's like no one wants to believe that these teams can actually do it. I think we're also seeing in the NIL era that the Big Ten has deep pockets.
That's exactly what I was going to say, and that's what kind of makes. I mean, Miami obviously being it's one of the few colleges in a metropolis, and like USC being in LA, and like Northwestern and Chicago. Like those are like the three big schools or in big cities.
Why isn't Rutgers good? Oh wait, it's in Jersey.
There you go. Just like every New York football team. And so I think it is really interesting. This is the third straight year we haven't seen an SEC team even in the national championship game. So like, and like because of those deep pockets, because Indiana and like, I mean, we've talked about Texas Tech throughout the year and what they've been able to do NIL wise. And like, these are physical teams because they've been able to go out and say, all right, we'll buy up a couple of linebackers and linemen on defense, offense, and fullbacks if we need them, and tight ends and whatever the case may be, because that's where football is. And it is a case of money, like money buying players, if you want to put it that way, but smart money buying the right players. And so you're seeing it prove it with Indiana and Miami, but also even further down into the playoffs and the SEC. Not that they're necessarily suffering because they're the SEC, but at the same time, it's changing a little bit.
Yeah, it's an equal playing field now. And I think we're seeing that really. I think Texas Tech has a really big opportunity. The problem with Tech has always been it's very hard to recruit there.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about, Indiana's in the middle of nowhere. Sure, it's in Bloomington.
Have you been to Lubbock?
But it's an hour away from Indianapolis. So, when you fly into Lubbock, you're in Lubbock. There is nothing out there in West Texas. And the closest, I mean, it's funny because if you've ever watched the show Landman, he's like, oh, I'm in Midwest, I'm in Odessa. I'm just going to drive to Fort Worth. I'm like, yeah, it's like a 6-hour drive. It's like an 8-hour drive, like depending on where you're coming from in West Texas. Like that's not like, there's a reason why they fly private jets all the time, right? So it's like, it's really hard to recruit there. I think what you're seeing, Tech to me is going to be the one because they've got their billionaire oil people out there in West Texas that are going to be willing to shell out some money because that program wants to be good. But if you look at the Big Ten and the alumni bases, go look at the largest alumni basis in the United States. I think like every single one of them are.
There's a reason Chip Kelly went to Northwestern.
Yeah. Because he wants to live in Chicago. You're in Chicago, which is a great town. You're in the Big Ten, which is going to have a huge base. Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's get into the game really quick. Indiana really didn't stop the Ducks. The Ducks really stopped them. I thought the game was going to be much like it was in Eugene, a kind of a 28-31 to 20-24 game. Like I thought it was going to be close, but you kind of knew Indiana was going to win. It just really wasn't there. They still had plenty of yards. I think that's why a lot of Miami fans have a lot of hope for this game, is because they're like, look, we feel like offensively we can move the game. The other thing too, like Oregon was also they had a pick six, a fumble in the red zone. They had a blocked punt. They were 0 for 2 on fourth down, but that's how Indiana wins. They force you to drive the ball. They force you into bad situations in the red zone. They're going to take advantage of anything that you give them. So it's exactly what we saw. And I put in our notes, the Hoosiers are the Hoosiers. They're going to run you ragged. They're going to pass the ball 3 times before they shoot. They're going to play really sticky defense, and they're going to try really, really hard. And I think for a lot of people, that's not – we don't want that. We want stars. We want this. A lot of things been made up about the age difference too. And I was like, it didn't be – of course, I was getting actually, they go on a mission because I was like, the logic would work for BYU. They got 25-year-olds playing. So I get that logic, but also it's the Cignetti mold. They want production over where you're getting your stars. Just because you're a 5-star player doesn't mean that I'm going to pick you up. Now, the irony in all of this is that 5-star players turn into NFL players at a much higher rate than anybody else. But the big but, Cignetti's not trying to win NFL drafts. He's trying to win football games. He's figured the mold out. I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, it is really going to be interesting. And I guess this brings us just to the final question of who you got. I mean, in the game, and I guess it comes down to I'll answer this first of in the professionalization of college football, it's come down to who's your head coach, who your quarterback is. And I think in the head coach conversation, it is kind of a break even. I love Curt Cignetti, not that he's necessarily overrated. Gets a lot of hype, a lot of coverage and all that stuff because he is very, very good. But I also think Mario Cristobal is another really, really, really good coach that hasn't got some of the love because he is kind of Mario Cristobal. He's kind of an asshole. He's Mario Cristobal. And so I think that's kind of a break-even matchup, even though Curt Cignetti's fantastic and Mario Cristobal might be slightly underrated because some people just don't like him. So it comes down to who your quarterback is. I've seen Carson Beck enough. Give me Fernando Mendoza. And so, I mean, I know that that is kind of the story that everybody wants to happen, and then Miami's probably going to win a 10-7 national championship game because that's what we all deserve after a decent playoffs. But it feels like Fernando Mendoza and the Indiana Hoosiers run away with it.
Yeah, and I think Fernando Mendoza is perfect for this team. He fits the mold of this team. People are like, it's almost as though he's almost AI generated. It was just there's no way that he's
I mean, when you said they pass 3 times before they shoot and they try really, really hard, I was like, that's just their quarterback. I mean, I don't know if he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not the most accurate. He's not super fast. He looks like Kirk Cousins in the face. But at the same time, it's just yeah, he's the number 1 overall pick. That's who, and I know that this is kind of a down year for quarterbacks in the draft and everything, but at the same time, it's the Raiders don't really have a choice other than him because that's the right guy to go with because of all of those different things, all of the intangibles. He's basically Dak Prescott, and then you can turn him into other things. He's Dak Prescott off the field as just a person, a human being, and then I don't know. He can be Matt Ryan plus on the field. I'm just trying to come up with somebody that he kind of reminds me of. And so it is really interesting. And he is this, like I said, with the professionalization of college football over the last couple of years, he's the poster child of it because Indiana, and you led them to a national championship in the college football playoff. Fernando Mendoza, you're the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. And I think too, if you really break it down, the same discourse was around CJ Stroud, and the way that I look at it, and people are like, "What do you mean they're the same?" CJ Stroud was so calm and collected. He was so good. He also had those receivers that a lot of people kind of discounted how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
He still went at the top of the draft. I think Fernando Mendoza, it's the same thing. If you put Fernando, I think if you flipped it, you put Carson Beck on Indiana and you put Fernando Mendoza in Miami, I don't think that you would have a lot of people talking about Fernando Mendoza the way that they do of okay, is this a gimmick? What are we doing? So I think at the end of, in all seriousness, at the end of the day, Indiana's the best team in the country. They've played that way the entire year. The offensive line is really, really good. I mean, the center won the Rose Bowl MVP. He's really, really good. Flip side, Miami's defensive line. The problem is that center is not the tackle. So the D-line is legit up front. Malachi Toney is the real deal. I mean, remember, this is a kid that should actually be going to a senior prom here in a couple months. He's not. He's in Miami. People are going to say what they want about Beck just because he does. He just rubs you the wrong way, but he's been great through this playoff run. The defense can stay simple and it's talented from the front end to the back. Heatherman can really put a game plan in.
He's a fun guy to watch call a game too. There's a few guys like a Wink Martindale, a few guys that just fun to watch call a game. He's one of them.
Yeah, and I think so if you're saying, okay, well, if this is the same defense, like what's the difference? Like the biggest thing to me is roster structure. Miami's going to play more man, right? Indiana plays much more Tampa 2 because they're cover 3 based, movement based. Like I said, on the back end, they're going to give you every kind of cover 3 look, cover 3 cloud. We're going to roll to this. We're going to do this. Tampa fits right into that. Miami wants to get into 5-man pressures because they want to, they want to bludgeon you with that front. They want to get Bain on your guards. That's how they're able to do that. Or they want to get Bain isolated on your tackle. Indiana, again, they're the Hoosiers. It's all smoke and mirrors, man. We're going to give simulated pressures. You have no idea where any of our guys are going to come from. We're going to send the linebacker one time. We could send a defensive back the next time. Miami doesn't stunt because they just want to bludgeon you, right? Indiana favors it. They movement-based system, right? Miami's going to blitz the nickel. It's a third of what they do. They led the entire, I think they were like 1 or 2 in the entire college football of blitzing the nickel. They have one of the better nickels in college football. Indiana uses it more as a tool. It's not really their base. So I think to me, that's your preview. Everybody's going to make a big deal about the relative age of Indiana. But again, I remind people this is a classic like Duke team to use another basketball. Now, if we're talking about Indiana, let's talk about basketball. It's another like old Duke team, late 90s, early 2000s. 5 seniors out on the field. Like they're not going to make mistakes. They're going to get you down. I think that this is a really, really good one. I think Indiana ends up winning this game, but I do agree with you. I think it's very low scoring. I think it's like a 17-13 game.
Yeah, that feels about right. And I mean, Indiana, they won their last biggest game of the season, the Big Ten championship, 13-10. So they're used to doing something like that. All right, going from a playoff coming to an end to the playoffs just beginning in the NFL, let's go to Carolina and the LA Rams. Almost the exact same game that we got a few weeks ago, just opposite results where Carolina actually loses against the Rams. The spread was -10.5. I'm not going to say how much I had on this one, but because I thought that the Rams were a little pissed off over these last couple of weeks. I believed in these. You see 5 defensive linemen, a team that's led by their defensive line, particularly on defense. Like I think that really changes like how you come and it come into a game and like you just knuckle up and say, like, all right, let's go. And they kind of have that in common with the Houston Texans. It, to me, didn't necessarily work out that way because, I don't know, Bryce Young's kind of good at football sometimes, but he decides whether or not he wants to be within games.
Bryce Young is basically like the dome the dome quarterback. Like everything has to be perfect. The room temperature has to be perfect. There needs to be no precipitation on the field, right?
He has to play in the NFC South because God forbid he go anywhere else. Dome with the Saints, outside with the Bucks, outside with the Panthers, dome with the Falcons.
Yeah, well, and like even that, like not just saying that he can't play, but like he's a quarterback that has to have perfect.
Right, Daddle's got to be cooking.
You have to have.
Defense has to be sizzling.
Yes, they need the run game. The offensive line needs to be able to block. I think that's another thing. They've got they're really a run-centric team on the O-line. They really need to get some pass setters. But again, typical Canales forgets to run the ball. I think what's really interesting to me is like Rico Dowdle I heard the other day, Rico Dowdle does not look like he wants to come back. He's going to go hit the free agent market. This is not, and I think that that's really telling. We know now, like most NFL teams want 2 really good running backs. Panthers have one of the best running back rooms in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Dowdle wants out because one game you're going to give me 20 carries. The next game I'm going to get to 6. He can't figure that out. So I thought that was really interesting. This was really like if you have not watched the Panthers, Mike Jackson, number 2, the field corner opposite Horn, and Jalen Coker, who I know a lot of the draft nicks love. All the people that I kind of know that are like real draft heavy in football love Jalen Coker. So you kind of had these two, hey, look at me, Mike Jack. I've been playing in the NFL now for 10 years. I was a practice squad player for the first 4. Like I've really kind of shut up. Obviously I've watched enough Panthers. I knew who he was. Coker is a big physical receiver. I think he's from like Holy Cross or something.
Yeah.
So one of those, I thought the telling thing in this, Stafford averaged almost 12 yards of air yards on his passes. He took advantage of those cap zones from the Panthers, was hitting things in between the DBs and the linebackers. And the linebacker play with the Panthers just has not really been there. This is another game again where the Panthers have been in the run game. Game control was just not there. They kind of did it. I thought, too, the Rams really picked on Nick Scott. There was a one down by the red zone where they got Puka Nacua in the backfield. They put him in the backfield. They saw Nick Scott come down. They went right after him. So, yeah, Nick Scott.
Ridiculous, too. Like, what do you do? Like, he's just bigger and better than ever. Like, and I know Justin Jefferson had a little bit of a down year, but that's owed to J.J. McCarthy. Jamar Chase got suspended for a little bit of the year. Is Puka the best receiver in football?
I think he's the best football player.
Okay, that's probably a better answer. Like, sure, Justin Jefferson might be the best receiver. Puka's the best football player, and you just like, all right, play receiver because
I legit think you could line him up at running back and he could get you 100 yards.
He play tight end because the dude can block too.
So to me, it's just amazing. I will never forget, because I'm a Baylor fan, I will never forget him playing Baylor and like going for 200 yards. I will never, when they drafted him, I literally texted Jordan Rodriguez, who at the time was working for The Athletic and was the beat writer for the Rams. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys got an absolute dog. And he's been that way. And so I think if we project this forward with the Rams, like, what are the major issues here? I think the major issue is going to be that secondary. And I thought the Panthers just could not. The Panthers, to me, on paper look awesome. Jalen Coker, you have Xavier Legette, you have McMillan. You have 3 huge receivers. They are a matchup nightmare. But you have a quarterback that looks like me trying to play quarterback.
Boom.
And then you have Xavier Legette, who forgot how to play receiver.
What do you mean? I don't know how to play receiver.
And I think McMillan, because he's a rookie, he kind of has don't get me wrong, I think he's going to be their version of Drake London.
Mm-hmm.
I think you match him up with a guy like Coker, who can kind of be that hybrid slot, that power slot. But Legette just kind of like, what are we doing? You were a first-round draft pick for a reason. They're basically this is your hometown team. Like, everybody wants you to be successful. And I think maybe it's just a lot of pressure. He can't figure it out. He needs to have a really good offseason and come back and really attack. But the Rams going forward, that secondary is going to be the issue as we keep going down. If the D-line can be mitigated at all, it's going to be really, really tough sledding for them going forward.
When moving on to the team that they will be facing, they're actually 4 or 4.5 point favorites at last I checked against the Chicago Bears, who, with the Packers, it's just like, yeah, we'll get out to 21-3 on them. But like, Caleb, let's just turn it on. And I think that a lot of people are like, oh yeah, he plays a lot like Mahomes because he can roll out and throw on the run and all that stuff. What I wasn't even expecting, no, dude turns it on in the fourth quarter. Is like, all right, let's go win football games. And so far, what we've seen in the first game of the playoffs, he's like, and against the Packers, no less, for the Chicago Bears, that's really important for that franchise and against that other franchise because it's the Packers. I think that's huge for them moving forward. Because they're playing the Rams, I think 4.5 points is really, really big. I might end up taking the Bears just because they play everybody within 3 points, whether they win or lose. But it is going to be kind of interesting to see how things go with this one in particular because of a lot of the things you just said with the Rams secondary. But the Bears offensively have figured a lot of things out, and it's owed a lot to Caleb's development throughout the season. And I think the other day was a culmination of that.
I still stand by what I said last week, that this is your classic, like, run and gun basketball team that shoots the 3 all the time. They're going to go
plays. Like, we just run plays. We can throw to our quarterback on the outside, and that's just the thing we do.
This game was kind of a microcosm of the whole season. Look, the Packers were kind of limping towards the finish line to begin with. I think defensively, they really, and I said this to, when Micah got hurt, I did a couple of spots on some podcasts for Packers guys and kind of talked to some of them through. And it's like, look, Micah's great. This was never a top 10 defense. The defense was always kind of mid anyway. And so what you lost was like really just kind of that knockout punch of a guy that, hey, we might be able to knock you out if we have Micah Parsons. I think after that, and then we saw Edrin Cooper go down. When Cooper went down, you could just see a shift in everything that they did was like, okay, now we can really attack these linebackers. They can't play base as much. When they do bring in their fourth linebacker, let's be honest, any fourth linebacker in the NFL is probably not going to be very good. It doesn't matter what team you're playing for. So I think for me, it was like, oh crap, that's not going to be it. You also saw some just things in the secondary, especially at corner. Again, this is a corner room that has literally been hanging on by the edge. Keyshawn Nixon was a punt returner a couple of years ago. Valentine is kind of a guy that you want to kind of, why are you still playing? Why can we not figure out the corner spot there? So to me, it was that. I mean, you even go back and look at it, 88% chance of winning with 3 minutes left, and the Bears end up winning. Colston Loveland wants to Cooper in. He went off. But that, again, it goes back to the Cooper injury. They couldn't really cover. They didn't have their coverage linebacker. It looked ugly at the first half. But when I went and watched the tape yesterday, recording this on Tuesday, so on Mondays, I typically just sit all day and I watch the tape, kind of take notes. If you go back and watch the tape, and I'm real weird about how I watch tape during the season, I don't really pay attention to like the time and the down and distance. I'm just kind of like, I'm looking for patterns, right? Looking for patterns. What are the schemes? What are the patterns? I watched that. I didn't know. You couldn't have told me that the Packers were up 21-7 at halftime. I thought that the Bears were kind of moving the ball. They looked okay, and then all of a sudden it was just like a culmination of things, and just kind of they just eventually just kind of overtook them. I have major concerns going up against the Rams just because the Rams are not going to make a ton of mistakes. Stafford's just not going to give you the ball. Now, has he had games? We just talked about it.
Only against the Panthers, though. Only against them.
So I just think they can control the game with the run. This defense really doesn't have much of a D-line. I thought it was really weird. The Packers just could not run the ball. They couldn't figure it out. Love played out of his mind and still lost, which proves the point. In the playoffs, you have to be able to run the ball. We just got done. So we have talked about the two losing teams in both of these battles. The common denominator is the Panthers didn't have game control, or they gave up on it. They wouldn't run the ball. They put the ball in Bryce Young's hands. That's not something you want to do, right? The Packers couldn't run the ball. Jordan Love plays out of his mind, and they still lose because at the end of the day, the Bears never sacrificed anything. They kept chugging along. And then look, Caleb Williams, to your point, made really, really good plays. I think we need to get off the train. I think he's still an above average quarterback. I don't think he's elite yet, but the flashes are there. And I think all signals are pointing you it's going to be heading in that direction.
Yeah. All right, Bills, Jags, looking here, and I think it was a very similar game, or at least two similar teams, and it just came down to whose quarterback was going to make a mistake. And I think even if, however you feel about Josh Allen, he does throw interceptions, but then you also look at, I can't remember if it's like the last 4 or 5 playoff games, 16 touchdowns, no picks. Guy doesn't, he just loses to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, no Mahomes. That changes things, and it just came down to Trevor Lawrence bookended the game with a couple of interceptions. And came down to that's all it was. And the Bills were able to walk away with it. And Josh Allen didn't make any mistakes because he's Josh Allen in the playoffs.
Well, elite quarterback play is going to beat elite coverage. Not that the Jaguars had elite coverage, but it was just one of those things like he had this Superman game, right? Jags run D showed up. They knew
he has to have 3 more if they want to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And they're about to play a defense that stylistically doesn't really match up with what they want to do. Denver's going to kill the run. And they're not going to do it just like the Jags. I mean, they're literally going to kill the run. Now, the one saving grace for the Bills is that they do really, really well. Allen does really well against cover 1 and cover 3. Well, what did the Broncos do? They're one of the highest middle of the field close rates in the NFL. So I think that's going to show up. I thought Allen, again, elite quarterback play, takes advantage of mistakes in the secondary. We saw this at the very end, kind of towards the end of the game. We had Newsome, who, former Browns corner, now with the Jaguars, who's part of that Campbell trade, staring at the quarterback as his receiver goes down the field on an inside 9, which is just kind of like an inside fade. And sure enough, Allen hits him. It's a major play. Was kind of a backbreaker right there. I thought Buffalo 2 game plan wise, this was the quintessential Trevor game, right? Where, man, he's played elite all year. And then the Bills go, hey, hold my beer. We're going to throw a bunch of different cover 2 rotations at you.
Like, hold on, what?
Yeah, McDermott was like, hold on, wait a second. We're going to be in Jacksonville at home, and we're going to make you look like the old Trevor. He threw 2 picks. He threw a pick into just basic Tampa 2. Didn't see the mic coming back over.
Just walked back over. I would have caught the interception on that one.
He stared down the seam. He knew it was a classic where, oh, good, I know I got Tampa 2, but I'm not going to look off the pole runner. He then comes over. Shaq Thompson, you can say whatever you want. He's played enough games that he knows exactly what to do. Then it was bookended by 2 picks. They ran 2-man, but they had a quarter safety on the backside. And so all Trey White had to do, Tre'Davious White, was get him to run the hump, which he did. He played inside instead of outside. So he got him to run the hump, and then Cole Bishop was right there to get the tips and overthrow. And I thought that was a really good example of the Bills doing what they do and what they're elite at, which is playing cover 2. And then they were able to mix up the looks. It reminds me a lot of like Indiana, where Indiana only runs cover 3, but they run all the cover 3s. The Bills love to run cover 2 at the highest rates in the NFL, but they run all the cover 2s, and they do a bunch of different hybrid coverages of it. So, Jag should have ran the ball more. This is probably Liam Cohen's probably sitting at home today.
Tootin had a very good game, but late in the game.
Look, they're 1 scoring drive. I even tweeted it out.
This scoring drive Tootin at the beginning of the year.
Yes,
we told you.
Yes, and so it was like this scoring drive was brought to you by the run game. Run the ball. Your offense functions much better. Trevor Lawrence functions much better when you can run the ball. We saw that too again when they played the Broncos. Everybody was shocked. But I go back. My dad is sitting there watching this game with me. He came over and he just turns over after that first pick. He turns over, and there were a couple of other plays, and we're about close to halftime, and he turns over. He goes, he really did play the best game of his life against the Broncos. Of course, when we're sitting in the stadium, it's my dad hadn't been in the stadium since the late 70s, and freaking Trevor Lawrence has the game of his life. And then here we are sitting on my couch a month later watching him basically be the Trevor Lawrence that we all know he is.
You couldn't do this on Christmas?
Yeah, you couldn't have done this. You couldn't have done this. You couldn't have played this game. I'm trying to get my dad to have a cool experience, and you just ruined it for me. As like Danny Heifetz said, because the Jaguars to me were the one team that I was like, I don't want to see them. And then, of course, I had to prove the point by going and watching them beat my Broncos live in Mile High.
All right, back to the NFC, 49ers and Eagles. You had this line earlier when we were talking about the Bears and Packers after Edgerrin Cooper got Edgerrin Cooper. I thought I said Edgerrin James. Edgerrin Cooper got hurt. You said that 4th linebackers aren't very good. Eric Kendricks is like, I'm a Pro Bowler with the 49ers pulling up. And I think with all the games that had so many different lead changes, I think that this game was the biggest distance in coaching battles, where it was like Kyle Shanahan's like, all right, one more game, at least one more game where I can win this game, and Bobby Saleh's got my back in this one, and we could just go to work. And as we currently sit here, it's nearly 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Kevin Patullo still has a job.
Yeah, so going to your 4th linebacker, the Eric Kendricks, I think it's hilarious because the discourse here, everybody, if you are new to the show, I am from Dallas, so I live in Dallas. In fact, I did a spot on 105.3 The Fan on Monday talking about DC coordinators here, but when I was listening this morning, so it's Tuesday morning, I'm listening this morning, they're like, and Eric Kendricks made a really good play. Somebody that Eberflus didn't want on the team. And it's like, he was on his couch 6 weeks ago, and here he is making the play of the game at the very end. And I agree. You watch this defense. So what I think's hilarious is that if you watched this defense yesterday and then you turned on the Houston Texans and you're like, that's the same scheme. And it's like, yeah, players matter. Players matter because stylistically, yes, Hafley is also in this, but Hafley loves a little Tampa 2 pressure here. He likes to stunt the front a little bit more. He kind of brings a more collegiate approach to it, so he's a little bit more diverse. Whereas like Saleh and D'Amico Ryans, the one thing, and it's so I was on the Fan. They asked me, Brian Broaddus, who's a former GM for the Packers, I think, and for the Cowboys, asked me, he goes, if you were the GM in these interviews, what would you ask? And what are 3 questions? The second one that I had was, how do you see the linebacker position in modern football? And he thought that was really interesting. I said, the reason is because these teams that can play really well at the linebacker spot, especially in coverage, look at all the elite teams. If you even go, what's the black eye or what's the bruise on that shiny apple for the Broncos? Those linebackers don't defend tight ends very well. Well, who are they playing? They're playing the Bills. What do the Bills have? 2 of the best tight ends in the NFL. So I think like you go and you look at like these truly elite teams, it's the middle point. McDonald, even with Seattle, they may not have the names, but those guys are playing really well. The Texans. So when I watch Saleh and when I watch Ryans, that system, those linebackers, they know when to drop, how deep to drop, how to relate to that. I thought that was a really good example because you asked it. That's why.
Well, and a quick question here where like we talk about like these offensive G's, Ben Johnson, and then a lot of these guys that end up getting these 32-year-old guys getting head coaching jobs. They're tight ends coaches at some point before. Is it true that like your Mike McDonald's or whomever it is, they're an inside linebackers coach for a heartbeat, and then they become a defensive coordinator? Is it something similar where it's like, yeah, so there's something about the tight end position and understanding that very, very specifically has something to do with modern offense. It's something with the inside linebacker position that has something to do with modern defense.
Well, I think it's the key in defensively. It's that,
and like I mean that could be true for all times just because it's the Mike linebacker position. But at the same time, because we've seen a lot of secondary based defenses over the last however many years, the linebacker position is being reinforced over the last couple of years.
I have argued, and I've told multiple people this over the past couple of years, the linebacker position is the worst coach position in football because it primarily at the lower levels, they only care about block destruction and fit in the run. Mm-hmm. And then you get completely lost in coverage, but everybody wants to play these zone coverages, but then you get completely lost, or you don't teach them man techniques. You just say, go guard that running back. Okay, that doesn't work. When you watch these really good defenses, the linebackers know exactly where they're going. They can fit the run, and then they also know, look, when I watch the 49ers and when I watch the Houston Texans, the depth of the linebacker drop, especially the weak hook, which tends to be, so this is away from the nickel, that is your vertical drop, whether it's 3x1, 2x2, whether it's cover 3, or whether it's some split field coverage. The depth of the drop of the weak hook is really the most important kind of piece in that intermediate.
And that's your weak side linebacker.
And that's your weak side linebacker. And you can really tell how well, I mean, I looked at this the other day when I was putting my Texans article out that came out on Monday. I've done like 3 different like little mini clinics on just the Houston Texans and how they use their weak hook. And I'm like, that's weird. That's like, but again, I'm a nerd. So it's like
Azeez Al-Shaair, though. That's a reason why we know his name, and aside from him getting suspended every other game, but like that's a reason we know these linebackers who like aren't like they're not like Fred Warner and like these guys are going to be in Pro Bowls every year, but they're making plays on these defenses that we're watching as some of the best ones in football.
Well, and 2, also, we just got done talking about the Panthers. I mentioned linebacker play was a really big problem for them. You go and stay in the South. The Buccaneers, that Buccaneers defense was awesome against the run. Terrible against the pass. Where were they terrible against the pass? In the intermediate. Why? The past 2 years, those linebackers have failed them in that. And so I really think it's kind of the secret sauce for elite defense. Like if you want to truly be elite, so like the Seahawks in the Texans. I don't even throw Denver in there because there are some major bruises at that middle level.
I'll add another team, even though the defense isn't elite. They played elite in their first playoff game, and we'll talk about them here in a moment. Robert Spillane and the New England Patriots. Like they played really, really well, and I don't know how long that'll last, but like Drake May didn't necessarily play well enough to dominate and win a playoff game like he had been all year, but because their defense was that good, and Robert Spillane at the center of it all is awesome. But let's talk about this real quick. Kevin Patullo still has a job. Howie Roseman is like, please, God, like Jeffrey Lurie's like, give us like 12 more seconds. You think he's out? What do you think they're waiting on, at least in Philadelphia, a couple of days after they lost their first playoff game after dominating the Super Bowl 12 months ago?
I think they have a really big. I think this will take longer, and I don't think we'll hear today. I think it will come tomorrow. I think that what they're going to do, they were evaluating.
As in when this comes out on Wednesday, just
yeah. So I think probably we'll be a little late to the party on this, but I think that they're going to take 48 hours, 24 hours to get over the emotion, and then I think the next 48 hours to really analyze Sirianni and his choices. We've talked about this as a running joke on this podcast of basically that when Sirianni doesn't choose the offensive coordinator, they win a Super Bowl. When he does choose the offensive coordinator, they
lose in the first round.
Right. They don't look very good. And I just want to also put, this goes into this. San Francisco is the first team ever in it to win a playoff game with 20 or fewer sacks. Here's the next one. The Eagles were +2 in turnover margin and +65 in rushing discrepancy and lost the game. So that those two things combined.
They've been doing that all year, though.
Yes.
That's what's so crazy. They've won the Super Bowl and they made it to the playoffs with an 11-6 record, won their division, and still they were
everything is good. And look, winning covers a lot of bad smells, right? Winning puts makeup on the bruises, right? DeVonta Smith was the only player with any kind of explosive play. I also think, too, an indictment on Hurts is the fact that people will blitz him. They have the second highest blitz rate. We've talked about this before with Lamar and Hurts. Saleh turned the heat up. Look, this is a team that does not blitz. And what did? They blitzed, and they bet Hurts couldn't beat the pressure. There were times when I'm watching this film, you can see the blitz coming, and Hurts the line actually picks it up relatively okay, and Hurts just bails. And not necessarily even scrambles, just as like, I can't see it. I'm going to throw the ball.
He's so like I think it was this year. I don't know exactly who it was, but he's so Russell Wilson, where he's just too small. And like, I mean, sure, the deep balls are great when you can draw it up nicely, and like he has the time to get it up and out of there. But he's just Russell Wilson.
Well, the problem too, I think with Hurts is always going to be they need to run him, and you're just not going to survive at quarterback, even with him. He's a physical spot. I mean, he's built like a running back. Mm-hmm. Even with him, you're just not going to get in, so you've seen what I've seen is a decline in, the tush push. Everybody's kind of figured it out. It's not as efficient play as it used to be. People have kind of got that. Okay. Now, we're not running Jalen Hurts, where he's more of a drop back passing quarterback. So you just see this kind of regression all through. We've talked about it too. It looks like a high school offense at times. They have no plan for third down. They don't really have a plan for the red zone. And so you just kind of see this kind of, it's shrinking. My point to this is Sirianni, I think, is a great motivator. He's a great CEO coach.
He? I mean, he's chattering at the one player who's been the only one making noise in your very loud franchise. And then it works if you win.
Well, that's my point, is like all of this cuteness stuff works until it doesn't, and it looks like it doesn't. And here's the thing: you hire slow, you fire fast, and I think that this is an organization that has been on the forefront of just analytics, draft, how to deal with the cap,
which makes the Sirianni hire so baffling to me. Like, you hired that guy knowing that could do, like, this was going to be an issue.
You know what's funny? I almost think that they don't let him go just because they can keep Vic Fangio. Because if you let Vic Fangio walk, that's going to be a major issue. I don't think, though I will say this, Fangio's from there, but it's going to be really hard for an offensive coordinator or an offensive head coach, because that's what you're going to get. Because if you're going to try and keep Fangio, you basically say, hey, we're going to pay you like a head coach. And then on the flip side, we're going to hire a young gun offensive coordinator. Well, Fangio's dealt with that. He did not like
Doyle with the Bears, 28-year-old and Fangio. Let's
go talk to Mike McDaniels about how that went when he went down there to Miami. So I think that if you're going to either have to clean house or you keep Sirianni, and then you just say, we're taking the offensive philosophy decision out of your hands. We want you to be the head coach. We think you do really good job with roster management. We think you do really good job of day-to-day operations, but we have an idea of what we want this offense to be. We need to try and maximize Hurts. Otherwise, it's going to be a completely new. They are not that far off. They just got to clean up the offensive line, figure out what they got to do. I don't think AJ Brown's here next year. I think Sirianni's here, but it's with a different offensive coordinator that's handpicked by the owner and the GM.
That's like the 8th one in 8 years for
tell me about it. Yeah.
Good God. All right. Just mentioned him, Robert Spillane with the New England Patriots. They dominate the LA Chargers. Justin Herbert looks really, really bad in his 3rd straight bad playoff game. But Jesse Minter held the Patriots to only 16 points. They started getting the run game after it, but that was just kind of they needed to do something offensively. But I mean, Drake May won a playoff game, and I understand that it's all the youth and all that stuff. Why not? Like, that to me, like, Patrick Mahomes went to and won a Super Bowl in his 2nd year starting. Why not? Like, you can see, like, crazier things have happened. And with as wide open as the AFC is, and they've beaten the Bills before, the only other team that has this level of pedigree. And I know you're Broncos, but they're on the opposite end of the bracket. So looking at the Patriots and Chargers could do nothing on offense. But what did you see, particularly from the Patriots, that got things going?
Yeah, so this was an ugly game. I said it was going to be an ugly game.
Mm-hmm.
I said this was going to be – neither team was very good just in terms of overall. So it was going to be an ugly game. That's exactly what it was. I thought there was a really interesting – Spillane said that a bunch of the Chargers players came up and were confused about what they were doing. I saw Dan Orlovsky made a comment about, like, he watched it and he couldn't figure it out. And I was like, I don't know about it, because I watched, and basically what they did is they showed zone, they played man. They showed man, and they played zone. There was nothing exotic, but the Chargers had no answers. And what that means is, like, because I think people were very upset with Greg Roman after this game. A lot of the receivers didn't know. They just took their initial indicator and didn't adjust on the fly as they're going down. And here you have Herbert, who's waiting for them to adjust. They don't adjust. What's going to happen? Well, they're going to get sacks, or he's going to get beat up. So he looks really bad. I think, look, Herbert looks bad because the receivers are not very good. I mean, you got Ladd McConkey, who is good, not great. You have Gadsden, who's a young tight end, so he's not there yet. You don't have much of a run game because you don't have the offensive line. And so I just think you look at it at the end of the day, they just were the better team. I mean, they were just better. The defense played really well. I mean, this is a Patriots defense that efficiency-wise is not a top defense, but raw metric-wise is. And I've always argued, too, like, there's a fine line in between there. You got to look at both. You win the games your schedule is given, you're given to, right? Mm-hmm. They've done that. So I do think that it's going to be a little bit more of a test. I don't think the Texans are just going to be – look, the Texans have a lot of the similar problems, but I think their offensive weapons are a little bit better at that. So, look –
their quarterback isn't better, though, is he?
No, look, CJ Stroud to me is very interesting. He looks like a one-hit wonder.
Because, I mean, yeah, it has been nearly 3 years at this point. He wasn't very good against the Steelers either.
No, and I think a lot of it has to do with the offensive line play. Actually, I was talking to one of the Cover One guys on their podcast.
He couldn't get a snap right for the first half of the game.
Right. So I think a lot of it has to do with O-line. I would love for them to actually, like, look, the defense is solid. Don't mess with the defense. Maybe
defense is beyond solid. It's
right,
great.
Right. Add an interior D lineman in the draft just for depth. Maybe bring in. Obviously, you always. I've always argued you draft DNs and corners every single year. So just bring in extra ones because you know somebody's going to get hurt
what
at
the
some
Chiefs
point.
did for 5 years.
Exactly. Do that. Get an interior defensive line. But hey, all your premium picks should be spent on that offensive line, bringing in more weapons on that offense because you got to figure out if he can do that. And we're already kind of with the Texans, but before that, I'll just say I think the Patriots are really fun, but I think they're a year off. I think the Texans beat them in another very ugly game. It's going to be a brutal, brutal game. It's going to be like 17-13. It's going to be kind of 14. It could even be 14-10. But let's transition to the Texans. This game played out exactly how I thought it would. Now, the 23 points in the fourth quarter was a little like I think the Steelers gave up, but too many mistakes by Stroud. You mentioned that 2 first half fumbles, interception to kill the third quarter drive. Aaron Rod, he gets the ball out fast. They were trying to do a bunch of, they couldn't do
Jalen Petrie was there every time. Like they were just going to be there. It was not gonna matter. Like on these like little screen passes that they were trying 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, the corner was there too. And like it was just not going to work out against this particular defense. And I like the Patriots next week. I'm a little bit on the opposite end of you, but I mean, if we see another Houston performance on defense like we've seen against like we saw against the Bills or like we just saw this past week, this is a really hard team to beat strictly off of like they have the confidence of like, yeah, no, we'll kick your ass.
Well, that's the thing. Like, okay, you can't run on them. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to pass on them. Okay. Well, they've got arguably the best secondary in the NFL. Okay. We'll pass to our tight ends. We'll dump it off. Oh yeah. Can't do that. We'll give it to our running back. Oh, well, you saw how that worked out against the Steelers. Doesn't work either. Look, their big deal is that they do kind of like early down. I call it the early down flip. So they're going to run cover 3 early down. They're going to either stack and depending on where you are on the field, and I wrote about this on Monday, they're going to either stack the box, get you in a second and long. They're going to play quarters. You're going to check it down. They're going to run and hit. Now it's third and long. We saw this play out literally with the Steelers. The Steelers, their only answer was, whoa, I guess we'll go empty. They went empty. I didn't keep track in the second half because I was like, I'm just not going to do that. But they ran empty on every third down in the first half. They ran empty on every single one. And I think Gainwell had like a bunch of targets in those on third downs. And it's just like you said, oh, well, Petrie ended up hitting him. Henry Toto ends up hitting him. Oh, there's Bullock that shows up to play. Oh, there's
Mari Lassiter's there.
Lassiter
yeah.
You
can't
like
even throw to Derek Stingley's side.
Yeah. So it's like just name everybody in secondary. Really name everybody. And it's like, okay, that. And I thought you saw too, like they were able to get on third down. Just look, their third down plan is literally we're going to overload one side. We're going to isolate one of our defensive ends on the other. We're going to overload who we think is the weakest guard. We're going to do some sort of a stunt, and then we're just going to play coverage. You're going to check it down, and then we're just going to run and hit. And that seems there's obviously more nuance to it because I've said like this is the NFL's anti-defense. They literally don't want to do a bunch of different schemes. So what they've done is within these simple on paper schemes is there's a ton of nuance. There's a ton of communication. And then they all know where they're supposed to go and where they're supposed to fit. They got eyes on the ball because they do play some man, but it's not a heavy amount of man. This is really a zone-based defense. This is the same defense you just saw the 49ers play. They just have a lot better talent.
Yeah. That kind of leads me into my next question. We've got a little bit extra time here. Obviously coaching candidates are big topics of the day. Obviously John Harbaugh getting fired by the Ravens, Stefanski by the Browns. Any underrated like coordinators out there, just because it's not that deep of a field. It's not like Ben Johnson on his 4th cycle where he's the top candidate. We haven't seen a ton of like these 35-year-old offensive coordinators we've talked about getting looks. Like, I mean, we've been talking about this Houston Texans defense. Matt Burke should be high on a lot of people's lists. We've seen Campanelli with the Jags getting interviews. But, I mean, it is kind of a thin field. If you are a candidate in this field, do you hold off like a Ben Johnson did for a couple of years? Because, you know, you're competing with Matt Nagy of all guys. Like, I mean, that's what's going on in this year's head coaching cycle. When there's 8 jobs available, they're all going to get filled somehow. Somebody's going to get to coach Fernando Mendoza. Somebody gets Lamar Jackson. And that's about it.
Yeah, I really think if you look at the big picture, the the head coaching carousel last year was just so loaded, and they all hit for the most part. It looks like
That's what's crazy
except for
too.
Aaron
They're
Glenn.
all, yes,
but they all hit. Glenn's going to get a second shot. I think what they're betting on is that Glenn knew in year one, and I would argue that this is probably the communication piece, at least behind closed doors. Like, look, we're going to tear this thing down to the studs, just like we did with the Lions. We were absolutely atrocious in year one, but then you got to find a quarterback. I don't care who it is, whether it's Dante Moore, which, by the way, we didn't mention this, but Dylan Raiola committed to Oregon, which probably signals that Dante Moore is going to be headed into the draft. So I think Carson Beck's the first round pick too. I think he'll end up going in the first round just because there aren't any quarterbacks this year. I think the one person that I am like, this is a no-brainer. If I'm the Miami Dolphins, and I think Harbaugh's waiting out to see if the Packers job comes open, which I don't know why you would get rid of Matt LaFleur. But I know up there, they want him out anyway. It doesn't matter. But if the Miami doesn't want to go with Harbaugh, I think Shula, hire the grandson of Shula, dude. He is one of the best. Like he's a Sean McVay guy. He's on the defensive side. He makes a lot of sense. I really like him.
that works. I hate it, but it works.
I think he's really, really good. I think you bring him home. I'm the kid from Jaguars that's been under Liam Cohn. I know that he's been getting the Shieldhouse kid, Kansas City kid, who's from.
Hey, don't get a head coaching job. We need you for a year or two.
Right. He's getting a lot of love because, again, he's kind of come up through that McVay, and he is in the same mold. So he has had the same job as basically like name a McVay coordinator as a head coach. He's kind of the next in line there. I know that their offensive coordinator is also getting looks as well. So, look, I think you're kind of right. A lot of people don't want retreads, but I think in the NFL, a lot of times it's like
Mike McCarthy's getting looks.
Yeah.
Like that's where we're at.
And I think too with like a McDaniels, I think he would do really good. But I think now you kind of understand, like, okay, we've got to create a little bit of a protected system around you. Like I think McDaniels would do really, really well with Baltimore because, hey, just go be the head coach, be quirky, be that guy, be the offensive weirdo that we need. Get Lamar on the right track, design your weird runs that with now an actual O-line and a fullback that you can use to kind of get that. But then, hey, we're going to take care of everything else so that we really need you to do game management. So I don't know if there's necessarily one of these young guys and I'm like, oh man, that's the guy that you need to. I think Halfley is probably going to end up with one of these. I think people forget he was successful at Boston College for Boston College. So I think he'll get some. I think that there will be some other guys that might surprise you. But, yeah, these young OCs, you better know who your defensive coordinator is going to be, and they better be able to run the defense for you. And that's why I think, like, Shanahan, people always argue, and we'll kind of finish here. The reason why Shanahan is probably up for Coach of the Year this year is because Robert Saleh is that defense coordinator. He does not have to worry about that side of the ball, which he's been babysitting.
Does he get another chance as a head coach? And, I know that it is interesting.
I think he gets one more year. I think there's a lot of things. I think people were a little turned off with some of the stuff that was going on with.
Was that Aaron Rodgers though?
I just think like how he kind of caved to everything that Aaron Rodgers wanted. It did, and like I don't blame
that as your first round as reality, a head coach.
Dude. You know how many people box score watch? They don't really know they don't take time to know what's going on. So I think that there's a little bit of a perception that, okay, let's see that this wasn't a gimmick. But look, he's proved to you that he's an elite coach. The Jets defense was one of the better in the NFL and completely collapsed under kind of Jeff Ulbrich being the head coach. So I do think that he's proven. I think that the problem with him though is that this class of coaches has a lot of young defensive coordinators that are not retreads that people are probably willing to give an opportunity to. And so Saleh, I think, is one more year. I think you give him one more year. I know everybody wants Brian Flores to be head coach, but I implore you again, go look at his track record, not only with younger players, because you're going to be going to a team with a lot of younger players, but also his track record with the Dolphins and kind of the way that he handled kind of the later part of that. Look,
Now that's one I'd be more worried about than Robert Saleh, if just me personally.
Right. And look, people change, and look, I'm not going to get into it. Like, he's been excellent with the Vikings, but there are some issues I think that people just don't necessarily know out there that surround him. The NFL, the big one is like the collusion. He sued the NFL, so everybody thinks he's getting blackballed. Trust me, if these billionaires can win a Super Bowl, I mean, the guy could be, he could, murder somebody, and he'd probably be like, all right, as long as you weren't found guilty of it, we'll put you out there. So I think this is going to be an interesting cycle. I think it's going to heat up. So we'll have lots to talk about it. And hey, as guys get hired, stay tuned to Let's Talk Ball. Make sure again to follow us on wherever you are. If you're on, again, I implore you, if you are on, half of our listeners are on the desktop or they're listening in Substack. Click one of those. I put links on there all the time. Click one of them, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whichever one. Go hit the subscribe button for us or go follow us. It really helps us out. Really appreciate you guys. And again, there were more lead changes in this week alone than in an entire playoff combined, I think, ever, is what I heard. So it's like, this is going to be fun. This is why the NFL dominates, is because you have no idea. This year's no different. I think you could even see all the teams that got the bye lose this next week. So, I mean,
hey, you heard that here first.
And I'm a Broncos
man himself.
I'm a Broncos fan. So I think that the two teams that, you could see them lose. I think you can see the teams that are at home this week lose. I can see the Patriots losing. I can see the Broncos lose. So I think that you see this is one of those years. Nobody knows who's going to win, because every team that you think is good has a major blemish in it. It's just matchup for matchup, week to week, who's going to win these one-offs. Thanks for joining us with Let's Talk Ball. Make sure to follow myself and Felix. Go watch some football.